Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Koneko, Kuroka and Kunou? If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Prologue. Cold. The crisp winter air left cold chills up my entire spine. I could feel it, I could hear it, the voices of those around me. I look over to the source of the innocent whimper, a canary. The simple creature stood perched atop the sign that I stood beneath, its gaze trusting but also eerie. As if it hadn't been heard for the first time, it spoke again, its words showing no signs of bird-like qualities. "What will you do, Issei Hyoudou?" In normal circumstances, replying to a talking canary was not that strange. In some ways it would be seen as a cool trick or the result of training. I didn't reply, however. It reminded me of who I was, of what I was capable of. I chose to simply ignore the talking canary and continue to wait, the wind finally catching on my jet black trench coat as misty vapor escaped my paled lips. The canary spoke again, this time giving a frustrated chirp to reveal its annoyed state. It finally flew away, gliding from lamppost to lamppost as it finally disappeared into the dense shrub surrounding the park. I straightened my trench coat as my autumn brown hair fluttered in the growing wind. My skin was lightly colored, a natural look for a man of Japanese descent. The brown mop of hair on my head was accompanied by innocent doe brown eyes. Even when the sun hid behind the clouds with glee, my idle eyes shone. The wind finally settled, and it brought forth the entrance of an elegant figure to the park. Her features were overlooked, as most sane men would be fixated on her honorable assets. I continued to gaze at her, the swaying motion of her curling blonde hair entranced me. Her beautiful, sea blue eyes finally found my profile, the dark clothing that adorned me made it easy to be spotted. She reacted casually, waving both her hands with a playful smile. I responded accordingly, approaching the beauty and the captain of the tennis club. "Hyoudou-kun," she yelled playfully, "I've come to see you." I frowned slightly, annoyed at the prospect of waiting for 2 hours in a chilly park. "Why couldn't you meet me at my home?" She laughed at my reply, before adding her own, "Your house is a little, well, empty, but that's beside the point. I wanted to take you somewhere." What does she mean? The blonde captain spun on her heel, causing the hem of her dress to flare out and her ample breasts to bounce a comical fashion. It took a few seconds before my mind tore away from her chest as her smooth hands grasped mine. "Let's go." The zoo. The gates of the zoo welcomed me, a sight that made me doubtful of my conviction. The blonde-haired senpai, Kiyome, accompanied me through the gates, latching onto my arm as we walked. The zoo, a place I was accepted, but also the place I felt most alienated. I remained silent, the danger of uttering a word was evident. We soon passed the enclosures, the chorus of voices surrounding me were daunting. I remained calm, flushing out the constant rabble around me. We soon arrived at a lagoon, as I slumped onto a mossy rock, exhausted. "Why did you bring me here, Kiyome-senpai?" I asked between breaths. "You didn't answer them," she said with a disappointment. "Oh well, that was a fun date, Hyoudou-kun. I'll see you tomorrow." But that she left the dense atmosphere of the zoo and left me there, panting and confused. I steadily walked home, the uneasiness of the day still slowing my pace. I began to wonder, why did she take me there? She knows that they all speak to me, taunt me with their trusting words. I couldn't speak, I can never answer to their calls. I finally made it home, entering my small house with a sense of relief. I lived alone, the memory of my loving family still lingered in my mind. It was my fault if I hadn't have called to it, if I hadn't have acted so curious as to answer its muffled speech. My parents would be alive. The beast that killed them, driven by pure animalistic instinct, was the being of my nightmares. I was just older than 6 at the time, my father spending the days at work while my mother cared for me and took me to school. I was a normal child back then, with a group of friends and a kind teacher at school. It was one moonless night that I woke from my sleep, a voice that called me, it called my name, beckoning me to find it. My power was not known to me back then, as I simply replied to the strange voice. It was a childish answer, a nervous prod into the unknown, but what I had done would seal my fate. The hairs at the back of my neck stood on end as I felt a feeling of unease. It was a growing fear that covered my tiny body as the figure approached me. It was a mindless beast, the 3 burning red eyes on its thick forehead stared at me intently as it surveyed the environment. I was petrified, the monster before my eyes stopping all my movements as it glared at me. It slowly crept towards my parents' room, both of us now in the hallway adorning the staircase. As the door opened by a slither, I finally spoke up, my tiny voice riddled with pure terror. "Don't go in there," I said weakly, as the creature increased its deathly gaze upon me. It was when the creature finally entered the cold room that I screamed. I screamed at the sight of my parents mauled and laying lifeless on their collapsed bed, the hideous monster covered in their blood. Screamed and cried, vulnerable, hopeless to stop the monster that ended my happiness. The beast rose its eyebrows, its expression changing before it uttered series of brief words, "Look to hell, and you will find me." then disappeared as if it had been a figment of my imagination. I whipped away a stray tear that had escaped my soggy eyes and tried to cap the memories that plagued my mind. Kiyome, the girl that had found me crying in the middle of the street. It was her pet that had sensed me, a chimera that consisted of a horse, an eagle and a wolf. She was incredibly kind and a source of comfort, despite her age being only a year older than me. She took me in, coaxed me to sleep every night, cared for me even when her father hassled her about arranged marriages, and most of all she supported me. It was her that wanted me to overcome my fear after all. I was beyond grateful to her for that, and as I left middle school, she used a portion of her father's money to buy me my own house, and my high school life began. I entered the calm atmosphere of the classroom. It was exciting but also frightening. The sensei smiled to me, introducing me to the class. "Class, this is our new student, Issei Hyoudou." She gestured for me to speak as she turned back to her oak wood desk. "Hi, I'm Issei Hyoudou. My hobbies are drawing, writing and tennis. I also love animals." I let out a breath of relief that I never knew I had kept in, as the sensei finally directed me to my seat. I sat on either side of two girls. The one seated to my left smiled and winked playfully at me, while the other simply scoffed and returned to her work. I was hard-pressed to find a reason why the entire class stared at me for the remainder of the lesson. Did I have something on my face? Was I acting strange? These thoughts filled my mind as the chimes rang and the first class ended. I stood up from my seat to be confronted by two brown-haired girls and a blonde-haired girl. "Where did you come from? What animals do you like? Are you single? Wow, he's cute." I was bombarded by questions and comments from the three girls, while the remainder of the males occupying the room glared at me. I struggled to answer until my arm was yanked away by smooth warm hands. The class was beyond surprised by the action, me being dragged out of the class by none other than the captain of the tennis club. "Kiyome-senpai," one of the fangirls shouted. "What is she doing with him?" "Hyoudou-san and Kiyome-senpai." As they entered the hallway I finally caught my breath. "Thanks for the save," she smiled and giggled playfully as she shrugged. "No problem, I have a favor to ask anyway." I was slightly uneasy at her change in conversation, but nodded. "You see, we've discovered this rare creature and…" "I'm sorry I can't help you, I just can't." "I'm sorry, but I'll never call again." I cut her off, already knowing the contents of her request. She was hurt but understanding, as she knew that she had pushed too far. She simply nodded and went off to her next class, leaving me in the hallway with a feeling of guilt. That beast, the creature that still haunts my nightmares, perhaps I'll never forget it, but one day I will end it. I will see justice be done on the creature that stole my family, the beast that ended my childhood. I was mentally kicking myself as I walked home. I really am a bad person. She probably needed my help. I was nearly at the end of a bridge when I heard the sound of light footsteps behind me. I instinctively turned around and my somber eyes met a young girl who now shyly approached me. Her features were distinctive, a perfectly sculpted head of raven hair and beautiful amethyst eyes that shone like the gems themselves. I didn't recognize her, being a new student myself. I didn't have any idea what her uniform belonged to. She confirmed my suspicions when she finally spoke, her nervous tone awakening a lustful hunger in my soul. She bowed respectfully as she spoke, her cheeks becoming a crimson rose and her eyes wavering. "You're Hyoudou-Issei, right?" I nodded, my eyes still betraying my neutral response. She continued, "I just want to know, are you dating anyone?" I remained calm, fighting to contain the excitement that brewed in my mind. I thought for a split second, what would Kiyome-chan think? "No, we aren't dating, so it doesn't matter. She only talks to me when it's something involving beasts or curses." I smiled hopefully and answered meekly with a simple "No." She instantly smiled, hopeful that her plans would continue without a hitch. "I'm a monoyume." "How about Sunday then?" she asked, tilting her head cutely. I shrugged my shoulders and answered passively, "Fine with me, I'll see you this Sunday." With that, she skipped off gleefully, leaving me confused and flustered for the second time today. Sunday came quickly for me, as I soon waited in the shopping district of Kuroka for my beautiful date. The date held little meaning to me, it only being a distraction from the nightmares that still riddled my mind. I flinched strangely as two dogs padded past me in front of their owners. Good, I thought, they never noticed me. Time quickly passed and after half an hour of waiting my date finally arrived. She wore a cute white top that aided in expressing her plump chest. Her black pleated skirt was accompanied by light pink heeled slippers that gave her a skip in her step. She finally approached me, smiling guiltily as we began our date. As the crisp winter sun began to set under the horizon, our date soon come to a close. Kiyome-chan brought me close to the large fountain that marked the center of the park. Her warm hand slipping away from mine as she smiled with glee. "That was a fun date, I genuinely enjoyed it. Could you do something for me to commemorate our first date?" I wondered what she could possibly mean as a stealthy smirk was plastered on the edge of her lips. I flinched, sensing the presence of creatures nearby. Not getting the reaction she was hoping for, Amano simply sighed in a disappointment. I wanted to have a little fun with you before I killed you. Obviously you don't feel the same way. She laughed sadistically as her body was covered in a filthy midnight aura. Suddenly the young disguise she had worn before was erased and her true form was revealed. She now held the appearance of a grown woman, a seductress, now accompanied by a pair of raven wings and a skimpy back S&M outfit. She laughed again as she raised her hand and formed a pale blue spear with a flash of light. I was unfazed, however, just confused as to why my life had turned out this way. As she raised her hand, I knew my death was inevitable, the cold tip of the spear already claiming its target. So in my last moments of life I called for help. I yelled at the top of my breath for my savior to come. It's no use calling for help, there's no one else in this par. She was cut off by a high-powered beam of golden energy as her grip on the spear loosened and the weapon disappeared. Her face was twisted, as if the act of someone interrupting her kill was a terrible crime. She turned around to search for the source of the attack and her eyes met a team of strange creatures. All were chimeras and smoke fumed from the horn of a dragon chimera as it stepped forward. A bird chimera parted from the group and made its way around them to find me. This is impossible. What are these chimera doing here? Where are their masters, or is it his sacred gear? Before she could turn around she was answered by a harsh growl and a series of blasts. She was gravely outnumbered as she soon realized that they were regrouping to flank her. She soon took to the sky, her body twitching with pure rage as she fled. I do say I will end your life and take the power that sleeps within you. Until then, with that she disappeared into the night sky and I fell to the floor, exhausted. It was before I lost consciousness that I heard a soothing female voice. It's alright, we found you, master. Gasp. I woke up to a pair of gleaming yellow eyes. I inhaled, prepared to scream, before a hand cupped my mouth and silenced me. I opened my eyes once more and gazed curiously at my captor. It was a creature that combined many forms of beasts into its body. I couldn't help but stare at its elegance, the power it represented. The creature bore a lion's head, not holding its usual color, but taking a darkened pitch. The skin from its neck to its forelegs was sharp and scaly, its wide body, equal in size to a Komodo dragon. Finally, the remainder of its glorious frame consisted of feathers ranging in size and color. The lion chimera raised its head, as if it was about to strike with its razor-sharp talons. It instead muffled a laugh through its damp nostrils. It finally rolled onto its belly, releasing me and bursting into laughter. Your face. Hahaha, that was priceless. I now sat up, confused at why the strange creature didn't kill me. I remained silent, still gazing at the miracle of nature before me. The lion frowned slightly, its deep voice sheltering worry. My name is Mortis. I only know you by one name, but it seems you don't recognize me. The creature continued to fret. My indispensable comrade, that is what you labeled me. Was I not lovable enough? I know that you adored Kappa greatly. The strange beast continued to mutter as it wondered why I didn't reply. I felt guilty for remaining silent, although another part of me didn't want to acknowledge the strange being. It was when that short little sentence was spoken that my interest was piqued. She's better off with the devils. My expression changed instantly. That one term devil drew my attention. Look to hell and you will find me. I recited that phrase in my head over and over. Hell, devil, my family. It was then that I finally spoke, breaking the vow I had held for many years and uttering my words with more conviction than ever before. Take me to the devils. The lion chimera smirked curiously. So, you finally speak. Your wish is mine to bear, master. The glorious beast bowed before me, its entire body looking down and signifying its loyalty to me. I finally got a glimpse of the area around me, the high ceiling and bright moonlight bursting through the gaps in the structure. It was a warehouse, but a large space of it was filled with frightening remains of its previous occupants. Mortis looked to me with pity, breaking the ice with a simple explanation. We had a little problem with some strays, we dealt with them. He finished coldly, as I looked to him, perplexed. Strays? My loyal servant shook his head in disgust. They are pitiful devils who run from, or kill their masters in order to fulfill their selfish wishes. He continued to shake his head, as if the word left a bad taste in his mouth. Why does Satan betray his master? The lion laughed hoarsely. Hahaha, the devils signify a Singe race. The name Satan belongs to the current Mao. Let me explain. There are three factions that each call a dimension their home. First there is the angels, creations of God that live in the heavens. Then there are fallen angels, beings that have fallen from grace and make their home in a portion of the underworld. Finally, the ones you seek, the devils, a race which is the center of the three-way battle between the factions. The devils inhabit the other half of hell and are the sworn enemies of fallen. I inhaled the damp oxygen of the warehouse as I let the information sink in. Devils, fallen and angels. The woman that attacked you, or Amano Yuma as you called her, was a fallen angel sent to kill you. Someone wishes you to be dead, and not because you can talk to beasts. I coughed sternly and gained the lion's attention. Mortis, let's go home. As I walked through the gates of Kuo Academy, all eyes were on me. I silently stole a look at my left shoulder, which nestled a charcoal black lion cub plushie with cute yellow eyes. I sighed and smiled nervously as waves of girls approached me and questioned me about the doll. For the remainder of the day he stayed in my bag, and when I was finally alone, I pulled him out and slapped him across the face. Ouch. I may be a plushie, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. He raised his button-like paws as I threatened him with another slap. So the devils are here at my school, I recalled Mortis' words when we had arrived home. My school, where are they, who are they? I can only sense the presence of two high-class devils in their peerages. One of them is Sona Citri, the student council president, and the other is Ria's Gremory. She leads the occult research club and has an interesting choice in servants, if I must say. Sona Citri and Ria's Gremory, I know for a fact that she is using the alias Anishitori. For that reason it may be hard to approach her. Ria's Gremory leads the occult research club and is a devil. If they run this club as a guise, then if I brought something supernatural to them, then they may just accept me. Let's go, Mortis, to the occult research club. I stepped forward, soft gusts of wind being the only resistance. I climbed the steps, took a deep breath and entered the old school building with an air of confidence. I soon came upon the oak wood door that read, Occult Research Club. I looked to Mortis, who sat comfortably on my shoulder, then built up the courage to finally knock. The door was opened right away, and I was met by a handsome blonde-haired Bishounen. He wore the standard black blazer and black dress pants, while he looked confused at my arrival. Hyoudou smiled uneasily, but after nodding to someone in the room he brought me in. As the door closed behind me I could sense the life force of a beast, but to my surprise, none were in the room as I briefly scanned it. It was not until I laid my eyes on the small silver-haired first year that I understood why. Taoju Koneko, the mascot of Kuo Academy, sat on a long sofa simply eating sweets while she paid no mind to my entrance. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor caught my attention, and I looked up to the source, seeing the very woman I came to see all along. Ria's Gremory, one of the two great one-samas of Kuo Academy and the school's idol. Her alluring crimson hair rested calmly on her back, ending just before her waist. As her caring green-blue eyes cast down on me I felt unveiled under the spotlight like an animal displayed in a petting zoo. But to my surprise she simply smiled and greeted me. "Ah, a student Hyoudou Issei, is it?" I nodded and bowed respectfully to the crimson beauty. "So, what brings you to our club?" I smirked and reached for my shoulder to retrieve the one mounting it. "Sorry to use up your precious time, but I have this thing which is something of great mystery to me. I'd like you to have a look at it." She raised an eyebrow as I handed her the plushie. The instant her palms grazed the dark fur it boiled and burst, tearing the fabric with tiny eruptions of energy. I grinned again as the transformation ended, then changed my expression when her confused gaze fell upon me. "Well, you certainly have something interesting here." Between her palms was a multicolored cube which glowed with a faint green mist and rotated at a steady pace in her hands. I merely acted ignorant for now. What just happened? Was that magic? The crimson-haired devil began to grow uneasy. The danger of revealing the supernatural to a mere high school student was all that occupied her mind. Where did he find this? Just what are his motives, if he has any? Knock knock. The room grew silent as another knock rang on the door. I quickly dispelled the cube while Rias nodded to Hyoudou, and the lion plushie sat comfortably on my shoulders again. The guest finally entered the room and I was surprised beyond belief at their entrance. "Kiyome-chan," I spluttered. The blonde beauty waved, then barged straight through the poor Hyoudou and tackled me with a bone-wrenching hug. "Issei-kun. I'm so glad you're okay. I didn't want to lose you, and when Fletcher lost your scent I was very worried. Why didn't you tell me you were alright?" I struggled for words as my childhood friend gave me a guilt trip. I knew she genuinely didn't mind, she was just a tease, but I felt like I had betrayed her, like my date with Amano disowned her trust forever. Almost reading my thoughts, Kiyome spoke in a somber tone. "It's okay that you were with that fallen angel. I don't mind, it's just, make sure you find time to make me happy too." I nearly choked on my own saliva as I swallowed a huge clump down my parched throat. "I'm not trying to make a harem," I countered. As I said this, a raven-haired beauty, with violet-purple eyes and a long ponytail, to finally spoke up. "Fufu, if it's a harem, I would definitely be the third wife," I was screaming inside my head as the conversation continued to spout forth. As if matters weren't already worse, my little companion transformed into a larger, more lifelike version of himself and began to banter. "I would like to say that my associate has a fetish for maid uniforms." This caught the attention of all the girls in the room like a moth to a flame, with Akeno, Kiyome and even Rias fighting over who would be my girlfriend. A small hand grasped my palm as the fighting went on. I turned around to see an expressionless Koneko tugging on my arm and pointing with her other towards the door. We quickly escaped and soon it quiet once again. "Why do you chose vengeance?" The question caught me off guard as I beepized her words in my brain. "What do you mean?" You lost something of value to you. I began to sweat nervously, then was cut off before I could answer. My sister, she went drunk on her powers. I hate her. They tried to kill me because of her, and now I'll never see her again. It was so surreal to me, hearing so much emotion from the forever stoic silver-haired first year. Then she suddenly turned to me, her eyes opening wide and her jaw dropping. You heard my thoughts. Get out of my head. She clutched her head and rocked back and forth as I leaned back in confusion. The word sunk in. Was everything that I just heard her thoughts? But that unless I'm part of her as a beast, I finally mustered the courage to speak, this time calling to the panicking first year. Hyoudou Koneko, what are you? I know you are a devil, but what else makes me able to talk to you like this? Her expression changed from fear to confusion as she scanned for the voice that spoke. Her eyes finally caught on me, and I could spot a slight red rising to her cheeks before she got up and fled. I finally entered the room to find chaos. Kiyome had Akeno's head pinned to the table, while Akeno held a sphere of bright yellow electricity in her hand, pointed at Ria's. The girl in question had a desperate look on her face and held 2 blobs of crimson energy in each hand like a pom-pom. It was a 3-way standoff, which was sadly interrupted by Kiba unsheathing his sword and gathering their attention. At the sight of me, they all straightened up as Koneko wandered back into the room, not looking up at me as she sat down. I coughed, signaling I wanted to speak, and exhaled. I know your secret now. I need your help. Rias was genuinely confused. She was expecting a mere high schooler to start shouting and carrying on. I stared deep into her eyes, causing her to blush when hers met mine. I grunted in frustration. So it's not devil part in her. I wonder what she really is. As I kept thinking like this, I saw Kiyome's face light up as if she had remembered something important. Oh. I remember why I was here. She picked up a box that she had placed down earlier and handed it to Rias, who was still blushing slightly from before. Thank you, was all she uttered. After a short while, the crimson-haired devil got to her senses and followed up on my earlier request. So what is it you ask of us, even knowing we are devils? I looked to the side. Devil's hell. They are my only leads to finding that creature and its master. I must avenge the death of my parents. Even if I have to die and go to hell. I will fight the beast that murdered my family. Everyone was silent, the room taking on a dense atmosphere. I continued, I need your help, please take me to the underworld. Ria smirked slightly at this, while Kiyome looked at me with compassion in her eyes. She soon stood by my side as the devils all gathered on the other side of the room. Rias nodded her head. I accept your request, but we will make it a contract. Under the name of the Gremory clan, I hereby signify and accept a give and take pact with HighSchool and my entire peerage. After making her declaration, the floor lit up and a crimson light obstructed my vision. A tall figure appeared from its core, a man with long crimson hair and an impeccable smile across his smug face. The entrance of the man brought the entire room to kneel before him. I chose to remain standing, as did the crimson-haired Rias as she walked closer to the man. She was surprised to see him. Oh, Ani-sama. What are you doing here? He laughed honestly, checking on my dear sister. His gaze shifted to me, who didn't acknowledge his entrance. His smile didn't falter, however. He just winked at me and continued to tease his little sister. So you are all devils? I stated, more than asked. Correct, in particular I am the Lucifer and currently hold the title of Satan, the Crimson Lord replied calmly. I looked to Koneko, while directing the question towards Rias. Tell me, my ability is to simply communicate with beasts and other creatures. Why could I sense this girl's inner thoughts when she is a devil? This question was met by a tear from Koneko and a stern look from Rias. Before either of them could say anything, I raised my hand, a memory from the past I see. I won't touch up on this subject without permission from Koneko-chan. Now can we go on with the details of this contract, Rias? I walked home from the meeting with a sense of relief and shaky knees. Wow, I just sweet-talked Santon into letting me come to the underworld, and all I have to do is sever an arranged marriage. I was briskly treading across the clay pavement, a skip in my step and a charcoal black lion plushie clinging to my arm for dear life. I decided to ask him a question as we neared the bridge that led to my apartment. Mortis, he snoozed lazily. Mortis. Huh? What yawn is it, master? Dragons. I groaned in response, while elsewhere a purple western dragon sneezed. This razor guy. He is engaged to Rias, and apparently he is a phoenix. What the hell is that supposed to mean? The lion plushie stood up straight, adorning a serious expression. Is he really going to do this every time he explains something? Yes, I am. Get out of my head. I screamed mentally, then a stern cough caught both our attention. I spun around, my eyes taking in a sight that shocked me once more. An aquatic creature stood before us, a chimera that was made up of a few mammals and many species of fish. I said this because I had no idea what those species were. Its head looked similar to an otter or a seal, with pristine teal-colored fur coating its body all the way down to the base of its neck. The base of his body was made up of a smooth outer cover that could only remind me of a shark or dolphin, while his feet were adapted from a turtle's so they could walk efficiently on land. Finally its tail was a mess of colors, too many to name and all waving about like streamers at a birthday party. Mortis turned on my shoulder and smiled, "Nice of you to join us, Chip, we were discussing about the phoenix." The chimera, now christened Chip, widened his eyes slightly. "Do you mean the pure-blood devil clan from the 72 Pillars?" Mortis nodded, "The very same by the way, how's Kappa doing?" They were both silent for a second before bursting into laughter. "She doing just fine. She's pretty much taken over the familiar forest and is probably challenging the Hydra for his territory. This is a nice reunion and all, but I have no idea what you're talking about." They both turned their heads to me, and Chip then clicked his tongue and bowed to me respectfully. "Sorry master, I didn't notice your presence, it seems to be less noticeable than before." He trailed off. "My name is Chip, at your service." I nodded then bowed to him. "My name is Issei, but you'll probably forget it." The turtle chimera tilted his head. "What was that?" "Never mind, you said you have a problem with the Phoenix clan, shall we launch an attack on their mansion and murder all of their descendants?" Mortis laughed wholeheartedly. "Master doesn't think that way as of now. Besides, he made a deal with the devils in this area to break an engagement." I sighed, looked to both of my shoulders, a burnt black lion plushie on my left and a teal blue turtle plushie on my right. I pondered what Chip had said before, like the legendary immortal bird, the phoenix. The members of the Phoenix clan share that immortality and affinity for fire, which make them near impossible to defeat. The man you're after, Razor Phoenix, is the next in line to rule the clan and is already competing in the professional rating games. I stopped him. "Rating games?" "The devil's system of peerages runs on the evil pieces. A set of chess pieces that reincarnates them as a devil and imbues the person with the traits of that piece. A rating game is a chance to show off a match using servants as pieces on a chessboard. Chess actually became very popular after the evil pieces system was introduced." I took a deep breath. "So you're saying that there is no way to beat this guy and that the devil swindled me?" "There are a few ways to defeat a phoenix: obliterate them with a powerful attack, mentally destroy them, or both." It was getting dark and I had finally rounded the corner until I heard a slip. Then I turned around, seeing a nun sprawled over and her legs open wide in the textbook panty shot that is so cherished for the 3 seconds it lasted. I sighed, then reached out a hand and layered a concerned look on my face. "Are you okay, miss?" The moment my hand touched hers, the crisp wind picked up and her veil flew off, revealing her glossy blonde hair and innocent green eyes. I was in turmoil. "Wow, she's cute. Wait, what about Kiyome-senpai? Why do I care? The perfect image of a blonde beauty is before me. Wait, isn't that what I thought about Kiyome-senpai erg?" She finally took my hand and stuck out her tongue cutely. Why do I keep tripping over wait, you speak Italian?" I was just as surprised as her words came to me in perfect Japanese while her mouth uttered otherwise. "As a byproduct to understanding us, you can also hear and understand any language spoken to you," Mortis interrupted. I replied meekly to her, "Yeah, I searched for more words. Yes, I do. My grandmother had an Italian husband and she used to teach me." I wiped away a drop of sweat, satisfied with my answer. "Oh," she replied, "are you a resident of this town?" I nodded, then pointed to her suitcase. "Are you traveling, miss?" She shook her head and blushed slightly. "No, I was appointed to this church just recently. I'm Asia Argento." I replied lazily, "I'm Issei, but everyone calls me Ice." "Are you looking for the church at the top of the hill?" I pointed to a winding footpath. She nodded, then looked wide-eyed as I reached to grab her suitcase and walk up the path. "I'll show you the way there." I yelled back, "Hi." She quickly followed, almost tripping over her own feet as she did so. We finally made it the driveway of the church. "Why don't you come in for some tea?" "I have to at least repay you for showing me the way here," I would have replied dumbly with "Yes, thank you very much." If I wasn't interrupted by Mortis. Master. "What?" I called back to him, "Can't you see I'm chatting up this blonde Bishouju?" He sighed telepathically, "That's not important now, strays are nearby. They must be dealt with." Asia was confused by my sudden change of expression, but I soon put on a fake smile. "I'd love to, but I have some business to attend to. Maybe we can meet up some other time." I took that as my cue to leave and ran off, waving over my shoulder and kicking myself for passing up a conversation with a cute girl. I was still running, this time being followed by a sprinting black lion and a flying teal blue turtle. Flying. I was huffing as I ran. "So where is this, stray?" 400 meters up ahead. Chip sounded in a robotic voice. We arrived at a large storage unit, dusty and abandoned. Perfect, I thought. We stepped inside and were greeted by a slim naked woman with a glazed look in her eyes. She had dark silver hair, pale blue eyes and near perfect skin. The only defect were the lines on her wrists where she had cut herself. I was skeptic, remembering the piles of entrails and walls caked with blood I saw when I first awoke. Her body began to quiver as we slowly approached, her head twitching and her body spasming with every step we made towards her. Her body bent fully backwards with a sharp crunch as I felt like I was going to puke. Her legs twisted unnaturally and she started to growl dryly. "A helpless fly is ensnared in the widow's web," I shivered, her chilling words reaching my ears. The beautiful girl that had appeared before me was now a hideous beast, taking the shape of an arachnid. Codename: Widow, low-class devil in terms of strength, but watch out for her poison attacks, Chip informed me. Poison, I recited, then shrugged off my worry and took a refined battle stance. I was still adamant, even though for a large part of my life, I spent training. I was still a human. Mortis crushed my doubt straight away. "For a stray she is pretty weak, we will lend you a portion of our power in order to defeat her, but you owe us both in the future." I took note of my promise and nodded quickly. Suddenly the two creatures beside me began to glow, Mortis glowing in a yellow light, almost angelic, and Chip glowing in an aqua light, like shallow water. I didn't have time to react as the two colors merged and hit me like a tidal wave. I felt so much energy coursing through my veins as my body flared with a pale orange glow and my eyes changed to gold. My hair turned lighter, almost hazel, and grew a single white streak through its fringe. I looked in wonder, well, the beast before me was riled. I shifted my stance and dashed in a zigzag fashion, too fast for the eight-legged freak to follow me. I kicked off the wall, turning in a semicircular flip before planting my flaming fist on her deformed face. Her eyes bulged, not expecting the punch, then her body began to burn from the inside. I looked confused as I stared at my glowing fists. "It seems you have developed a grasp for Tauki, very interesting." Both voices combined into one in my head as I watched grimly as the stray began to disintegrate. She started screaming, "Kill me. Kill me, please." I answered her prayers by lifting my leg and bringing it down with such force that it made the corrugated iron ceiling flex. Her remaining bones were crushed and her body soon began to disappear, following the wind and heading towards the afterlife. I dusted my hands, the orange light that had aided me left my body. Mortis and Chip stood bewildered. "You are an interesting one, master," Mortis stated while chuckling. "Well, we were in your body, we noticed that you do have a surprising affinity for Senjutsu, but we also noticed something else, a sleeping power. We have no idea what it is, but it seems draconic, we'll have to wait until you unlock this power." I nodded, then briefly looked back to the burnt walls and dented ceiling of the abandoned warehouse. "The good news is that you can freely use Senjutsu now, but it will deplete your stamina greatly if it remains untrained. It's strange for this to occur in a human, usually only yokai develop these abilities, but a human." Both plushies informed me. "Good," I thought, "if I can manipulate this energy maybe I can defeat Razor. I've seen his peerage, I'll need an equal force to stand a chance against him." I picked up the remote and turned off the TV, realizing my efforts to block out background noise was a fruitless attempt. I looked over my shoulder in grief, seeing my trashed kitchen and the bodies of two small stuffed toys fighting in an internal struggle. I shook my head and just went to staring at the blank screen until I heard a knock that breached the wall of sound. Shit. I quickly ran to the door, prepared for anyone to enter, but to my surprise, Kiyome-senpai, she poked my nose and giggled. "I told you to call me Kai-chan," she whined. I invited her in, gesturing to the two plushies that were still combating in the kitchen. "This is Mortis and Chip, they're chimeras, but I never actually let them into my house, my eyes shot wide open and I doubled back. Oh crap, he's got a flamethrower." We struggled to change direction and run out the house. At the same time a figure approached the door. I better follow human custom and knocked. The door sprung off its hinges and fell straight onto the uninvited guest, causing her to yelp as we ran over her, followed by two insane plushies. The woman kicked the door off herself and looked at the carnage before her. Mortis and Chip were tearing each other apart, Mortis now getting hold of a flamethrower, while Chip used some form of water magic to dispel the growing fires. I could only watch, shaking my head in shame as my two servants tried to strangle each other. Kiyome was thrilled, pumping her fists and chanting for the two bloodthirsty chimeras that she had met moments ago. Why can't my life be the slightest bit normal? I was interrupted by a stern cough and looked up to a silver-haired maid who was giving off a very powerful aura. "Greetings, Hyoudou-issei. I am Graphia, the maid for the Gremory family. I am here to talk about." I silenced her with my finger, which made her growl, but I pointed off into the distance. "We are being watched, they are very close." She nodded, to my surprise sprouting bat wings and flying up to survey the skies. I ran onto the lawn and scooped up the spitting plushies. "Hey." I was going to have at this mother. I slung Mortis over my shoulder, silencing him as I sprinted towards my enemy, followed by Kiyome and Graphia. I rounded the corner of my street and I felt the swarm of auras start to dissipate. An insane voice caught my attention as Mortis kept flailing on my shoulder. "Yo ho, Mr. Beast Man, I'm Fried Zelzen. I was busy slicing devils, haha, I'll just cut you down with this light sword and my prized gun." The man was insane. I prepared my body for a fight until I heard frightened scream, "No." The deranged man looked backwards over his shoulder and stuck out his tongue. "Thank you for that lovely scream, Asia. Nice timing, I am about to kill this worshipper of Satan." Is the barrier erected? She stood frozen at the sight of mutilated bodies, some nailed to the walls and an upside-down crucifix. "No." She repeated, then she noticed me standing with a fierce expression with 2 stuffed toys on my shoulders. "Issei-san." She quickly stood in between me and the insane priest. "Issei-san is not a bad person. Don't hurt him, please, Father Fried." I was angry but also touched that she would stand up for me even after only meeting me a day before. This man made a contract with the devil. If you make deals with the devil you are no longer alive, then, slice. I kill you. Ha 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 ha. I boiled with anger. "Asia, get back. I can handle this freak." She nodded, then scampered away, hopefully to the safety of Kiyome and Grafia. I woke up both plushies with a nudge of my shoulder. "Hey. I'm going to need to borrow your power to kill this priest." Mortis nodded, half awake. "Whatever you know or something." They both merged together and absorbed into my body. "Ha ha, yes. Power up, resist your death. I love it when my prey struggle. Love 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 love." I spread my legs and lowered my fists, lowering my head and tightening my muscles. In the small space I sprinted, then flipped several times in the air, spinning to the left, avoiding a stab from his light sword, and landed a fist on his face. He writhed in pain. "Haha, it hurts. It really hurts. More, more." I lifted my fist to put the poor soul out of his misery, but a spear of light intercepted my fist. I quickly spun around and saw the buxom black-haired girl who had toyed with my life. "Uma," I said coldly. She screwed up her face, looking down on me while she floated in the air with her wings. "Don't call me that name, you pathetic human. You will pay for insulting me, it cost me greatly." As she turned, I saw the red mark down her side and felt a strange sense of pity for her. Grafia and Kiyome soon caught up to me and stood by my side as I prepared to face the fallen angel. Fried screamed in pain, laughing while his insides turned to dust. I waved my hand over my shoulder, signaling for Kiyome to take Asia to safety. From the sky appeared a dark obsidian portal, as it widened to the size for a person to move through it. 4 bodies appeared from the large portal, the first 3 rushing to their fallen brethren. "Rainer. What happened? And what is this human doing here?" She turned to her friends. "Middle Kalwerner. Donasik, what are you 3 doing here?" She trailed off when her eyes met the 3rd figure that appeared from the portal. "Bakabiel," we all yelled in unison. The man in question laughed, his mouth gaping open and his eyes glowing red. "Haw, haw. This is what the devils put up against me, a human. Haha, I heard that the devils were planning something to do with one of my former targets, so I sent a team to investigate. Oh, how disappointing. Bakabiel." I turned around to see Grafia steaming in a fit of rage. "Oh, if it isn't the strongest queen." The cadre fallen hinted sarcastically. I stood before the group of fallens, remaining silent, containing my fit of rage, so I could save it for him. "Look to hell and you will find me." I shook my head. "What is it, human, given up? Are you accepting death?" This ECI cut Bakabiel from his taunt. "Shut up, the fallen commander couldn't have been more pissed if you'd laid a dump on his head." "How dare you?" Kiyome approached me and put a hand on my shoulder. I rejected it. "Shut up. You pompous bastard. What gives you any right to decide over life and death? What gives you any right to waltz into the middle of devil territory like your god?" My tone was fierce, unbreaking, only adding to my rising rage and powerful aura. The cadre level fallen began to sweat. "I can't sense his aura, but it's something about him that I've seen before, maybe no. Was it from the Great War?" He shook his head and growled. "I only came to observe. Retrieve the nun and you will be rewarded handsomely." I clenched my fists and ground my teeth. My hair turned lighter, almost white, as I suppressed my anger. "You bastard," my skin turned slightly darker and my eyes morphed from a bright gold to a jade green. "See you soon, human." He disappeared into the obsidian portal and a part of my rage subsided. It was then that I dodged a light spear headed right for me. Damn, I've got to save Asia. I turned to the silver-haired maid. "Grafia, get help quickly." She nodded and vanished under a magic circle. I looked back to my enemies. Wait, where did that priest go? I noticed a trail of blood leading off elsewhere and shook my head in disgust. "Stop ignoring me, you petty human." I looked up to Rainer and her friends as they all pointed light spears at my still silent body. "Rainer, why do you follow this warmonger? You are a fallen angel by blood, yet you are going against your own race to destroy devils. Why, Rainer, why?" She couldn't reply, her mind deep in thought and her eyes full of guilt. The only male in the group, Donasik, was not happy about his master's actions and charged forward. "Shut up, you insolent brat. What can a petty human possibly do in a quarter of a second?" I closed the gap between the fallen angel and met my flaming fist with his stomach. Each hit rocked his body as his screams remained unheard in my ears. "Donasik. Rainer, do something." The remaining angels hastily tried to save their comrade. Rainer turned away, a slight tear forming in her eyes. "Retreat," she uttered, almost a whisper. There were no further words from the fallen as they escaped into a portal and left the dying Donasek in my bloody arms. The Grigori. "What happened to you, Rainer? What did he do to you?" Kalwerner tried desperately to speak to her friend, while Middle walked over and sat on the couch with a gaze of worry on her face. Rainer closed her eyes, remembering the last words of her dying mother. "Bakasan." "No," she reached over a frail hand and touched the young girl's soggy cheeks. "Promise me, Ray, promise me that you won't make the same mistake as your father." Her arm went limp and Rainer sobbed into the sheets of the hospital bed. "I betrayed her," she finally said. I she started to sob. "I don't deserve to live." She cried into the open shoulder of Kalwerner, finally shedding off the cold, grim shell she had worn for 20 years and releasing her emotions. "That human, just what is he? What's so special about him?" That Kakabiel fled. I once again sat on the couch, facing the worried expressions of everyone. Asia sat on the couch opposite, petting Mortis for comfort. Kiyome rested her head on my shoulder and held my arm closely to her chest. I would have been reeling in the sensations of her lovely oppai if it wasn't for the expressionless Koneko that sat on the couch opposite me. The Occult Research Club, ORC, still felt alien to me, but had a similar atmosphere to that time. Riaz and her queen Akeno were busy consulting Grafia about yesterday's attack, while Kiba was on one of those devil jobs that Mortis had explained to me. I suffered in silence, being the only person shouldered with the burden of other people's thoughts. I could hear Kaneko's voice. A voice that could only be made by her soft lips, even as hers didn't move. She was riddled with the conflicting thoughts of her sister, the pain that pitiful woman left her with. I had asked Riaz about Koneko, and she was shocked that I'd found out. She sighed. Koneko was born a Nekomata, who is part of a rare species of Nekashu. After Koneko and her sister's parents died, they were reincarnated into a peerage and lived happily together. But as her elder sister grew stronger, she went out of control and killed her master, becoming a stray and running from the authorities. Many people believed that Koneko would turn out the same and tried to kill her, but my brother stopped it and put Koneko under my care. I looked over to Koneko again, her petite form reminding me so much of my younger cousin living in Kyoto. I sighed as Grafia finished informing the orc and finally wandered over to me. She wore a neutral expression. "What I was trying to inform you before we were attacked is that as part of the contract, we will train you in preparation for your battle." My eyes widened. Train. Razor has a full peerage of devils, all are formidable, and all have had real combat experience. "You also face the problem of his immortality." I nodded, gesturing that I already knew. I was interrupted by Kiyome, who looked into my eyes hopefully. "I'll come with you to Issei-kun." She gripped my arm tightly and widened her eyes. "Ooh, so cute." I shook my head. "No, stop, can't let perverted thoughts seep in." Kiyome thrust her finger into the air and smiled. We're off to the mountains." I blinked several times. "What?" Grafia and I shouted in unison. The silver-haired maid pouted. "I was just about." Boink. Kiyome pushed past her, nearly knocking over the poor woman as she dashed for the door with me in tow. "Sorry," was all I could mutter as she yanked me through the door. Meanwhile Riaz stood bewildered behind her desk with a heavily ticked eyebrows. "KCK, that woman." I struggled to keep up with Kiyome as she floored the staircase and burst out the door of the old schoolhouse. I sighed in relief as she stopped ahead of me, a troubled expression covering her lips and a glint of sadness in her eyes. I struggled to catch my breath as I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Kiyome." She didn't look back, only staring at the setting sun. "Kiyome, what's wrong? Why did you leave like that?" I stumbled as her head suddenly snapped backwards with such speed. I was surprised when her expression was not anger, but worry. "I don't trust the devils. They helped us fight back then," but her eyes started to water, and soon she burst into tears. "I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go with the devils to chase after that thing. Do you think it will bring you happiness?" I couldn't speak. I could only ponder the true feeling the woman before me held. The tears subsided and she rubbed away the sadness that came with them, smiling like she always does. "Come with me." She put her slender fingers to my parched lips. "Come with me to Kyoto." I looked back to the old schoolhouse, then back to the beautiful girl who was offering her hand to me. I nodded and we joined hands, leaving behind the room of confused devils. "The Grigori. You have insulted my name." The cadre warmonger Kakabiel bellowed. "Kakabiel don't know our deepest apologies." The three in question bowed and begged for forgiveness, while the middle of the three stepped forward. Kakabiel's eyes opened wide as the angel stood before him, a defiant smile on her face. "Why do you follow this warmonger? You are a fallen angel by blood, yet you are going against your own race to destroy devils. Why, Rainer, why?" Those words filled her mind as she spoke. "I formally abolish my post as a member of this squad. I hereby banish myself as a renegade to the human world for all eternity." The fallen cadre continued to stare until his eyes constricted and his fists tightened. What did you just say? He roared, struggling to keep his nerves under control. Rainer turned on her heels and walked past her shocked comrades. She halted before the oak wood double doors and turned, giving her previous boss the two-fingered salute before vanishing through the doors. I stumbled slowly as I wandered through corridors aimlessly. They were all green, the illusionary walls that surrounded me. I rounded several corners, then came to a halt before an open passage, the ice-cold air seeping from the opening and sharpening my senses. I entered the dark crevasse with animosity, my bare feet padding across the smooth cobblestone floors. A growl sent me on edge, followed by a flash of light and an overwhelming feeling of anticipation. The haze finally faded and the contents of the room was clear to see. The dining hall scattered with empty plates and wine glasses. The tapestry on the walls was an ancient design, a crest of Norse origin. Gasp. I inhaled a breath of stagnant air and sighed in relief as I saw the familiar walls of my bedroom. Just what was that? I wiped the sleep from my eyes and glanced over to my alarm clock, 5:49 a.m. Damn, it's too early. Well, I guess I should get ready for school. I stumbled through my house, walking past a locked door and into the bathroom. Still rubbing my eyes, I grabbed a towel and threw open the shower door. Ah. My eyes shot open and I struggled to stop my nose from bursting at the sight, a pink-haired girl in the shower. I quickly covered my eyes on instinct and spun around on the bathroom floor. I am sorry, I spluttered before turning and shouting in surprise, what are you doing in my house? The girl didn't bother to cover her damp skin as she leaped out of the shower. I stumbled backwards as I tried to comprehend just exactly what was going on. What are you doing in my house? I repeated, my words out muffled as I pinched my nose. She walked up to me and poked my nose curiously. You are strange. I blinked several times, then quickly turned around. Please cover yourself. I screeched as I handed her my towel. With a frustrated sigh, she wrapped the towel around herself, much to my relief. I uncovered my eyes to feast at the sight. Her features rivaled Kiyome's, sparing her damp, clingy cherry pink hair and golden eyes. I continued to stare until a cold paw grasped my shoulder. Master, who is this babe? I shot a look over my shoulder to find Morta staring with hearts in his eyes. The soft padding of bare feet caught my attention, and before I could react, the mysterious beauty was already halfway out of the bathroom window. Thanks for the shower. She giggled as she leapt out of the window and into the rising sun. I looked back to Mortis, who was still starstruck. I slapped him across the face, waking him from his trance as I left to get another towel. Just another day in my messed up life, I thought. School. The part of life that most dread. The place of strenuous homework and the pressure to achieve. I found peace instead, the school and the studies being the only normality in my life. The number of stray devils was growing at the same time. I always felt a presence looming over me, their killing intent flowing profusely from the unknown source. My powers were still forbidden territory for me, the still tender wounds from my past, making me both resent and gratify the new powers that awakened in me. This is enough, that is what I kept telling myself. It was enough to deal with the strays that sprouted constantly from under the woodwork. It was enough for me, but the despicable feeling of curiosity still lingered in my mind. I caressed my face and cupped a handful of water to freshen my fatigued face. I looked up into the mirror, looking at my own appearance and measuring its wealth. Pull yourself out of the gutter was all I could think as I turned away from the mirror and plastered a presentable expression on my face. Kiyome was absent today. The tennis club was attending a regional doubles tournament, the winning team moving on to the nationals and eventually playing in the Australian Open. The event was a big thing for her, not surprisingly, seeing as the academy had impeccable facilities and top-notch training schedules. I grimaced a little as I passed a set of willow trees in the old school building. After Kiyome had invited me to Kyoto, I came to the conclusion that I would avoid the devils completely, but the guilt of leaving Asia and the lingering thoughts of Koneko still put me on edge. Did I do the right thing? I let out an audible grunt as I traversed past a Victorian-style building and to the shade of a large tree. I pulled out my bento with fluent movements and snapped my chopsticks in half in preparation to eat. The soft gusts of wind that swept through the branches above, calmly shaking the leaves and increasing the calm, peaceful atmosphere. It was until I heard a sound that breached the wall of serenity, footsteps. I lifted my head lazily, my mouth full of steaming ramen as the source of the footsteps came into full view. The black-haired girl with cold amethyst eyes and the figure of a seductress. "You, Rainer," I shouted in surprise, almost choking on my meal as I did so. She walked closer, ignoring my words and the disgusted tone that they seeped with as I spoke. "What the hell are you doing here?" I roared, my throat now cleared. Her face finally came into my view, her appearance shocking me into silence. Scars. The skin not caged by her clothes still didn't cover up the wounds all over her body. A brief wave of emotions washed over me, sympathy, empathy, until my mind sent me a painful reminder of who this woman truly was. She let out an audible gasp as I stood fully, a full head taller than her and with a look of disgust strewn on my face. I didn't utter a word as I turned to leave, my lunch still open and half devoured. A hand gripped my shoulder firmly, but not forcefully. Rainer stopped me in my tracks as I turned my head to look backwards towards her. She muttered. I left Kakabeel, my eyes shot open in confusion as I turned around to now face her fully. Realizing she had piqued my interest, she continued to speak. I left his squad with my subordinates, we are all renegades now. The scale of the situation finally sunk in and my eyes widened even further. She stripped herself of her right to be a fallen angel. Why would she possibly? I cut off my own thoughts as sour feelings began to rise. Is this some ruse to get me to forgive her? I shattered her settling posture as I again masked my face with distrust. How do I know you're not trying to trick me? She struggled to keep her demeanor. Do you think these scars are fake? She retorted, almost shouting. I had to leave. Kakabeel forced me to do all those things. But he couldn't force you to say what you did either, not to mention enjoy it. My face was red now and a bit of my aura was leaking out. I couldn't even look her in the eyes until she gripped my arm tighter. What will it take to get you to trust me? She was screaming now and tears began to appear in the corner of her eyes. I didn't speak, instead stopping the flow of my aura and calming down. What is it that you came here for? I asked, my tone in more of a neutral state. Her eyes were still puffy and red from crying as she rose her head to see mine. The place to stay, she uttered quietly, her voice ragged. I looked at her one last time. She has changed. Everything about her is different from before. I'll find out in the end. Okay. She did a double take, her eyes blinking a few times in surprise, as if she weren't expecting an answer, let alone a yes. I gave her time to recollect herself as I bent down to scoop up my things and leave my spot under the tree. Rain. Sometimes it's the worst thing I can think of, at other times it feels like a gift from the heavens. I thought that as I watched a tiny droplet strike the stained glass window of my bedroom. The light pattering of rain as it hit the surface and lost its fight with gravity, streaming down the glass. I shifted my pillow uncomfortably as I tried to settle in my bed once more. A soft snore and sleepy grunt pricked my bubble of silence. I rolled over in my covers and stared at the outstretched futon laying on the floor below me. Side by side slept a tall blue-haired woman and a young blonde-haired girl. The latter slept peacefully, while the former let out another loud snore. How or why I ended up with two beautiful bishoujo sleeping beside me I'm not too sure of. All I can remember is carrying tons of luggage then relaxing on the sofa. Wait, did they drug me? I let out another dry grunt and looked out at the downpour raging on outside, willing it to go away and for the sun to rise. Odd morning. I instantly shot up, nearly banging heads with a startled girl looming above me. Wait, girl. I quickly sat fully upright, knocking the poor person over as my senses returned and I collected my thoughts. I looked up to see the girl in question, with shining platinum blonde hair and deep turquoise blue eyes, Kiyome. She wore a surprising choice of attire, a one-piece black lingerie cupping her glorious assets with satin. All the while, the fabric along her tan thighs was parted, showcasing the smooth bronzed legs that men would drool over. I could say this with confidence, as I was almost drooling at this point. Hey Kiyome, what are you doing here? I spluttered, wiping away a trail of drool and nearly coughing my words instead of saying them. She smiled, pinching my nose playfully before the flow of blood could continue to flow. She walked slowly to the window, her figure swaying seductively and her alluring scent filling the air. Flawless and elegant. The only things that could express her beauty in mere words. Staring out at the window, then to the two futons, messily nestled on the floor, her expression changed to a childish pout. I searched everywhere for you after we returned from the regionals, then I find two strangers and that girl from before. Ice-kun, you're not cheating on me, are you? Her tone said you better tell me or I'll castrate you and feed your bits to your familiar, but her playful pouting killed the seriousness of the question instantly. I dodged the question with one of my own, where did they go? Her playful pout turns into a victorious smile, I sent them to the store to buy more sake. I nodded, as if saying that's fine until my common sense kicked in. Wait, what? Aren't you a minor? Never mind that. What do you mean by more? The grade of the conversation was slowly turning into an interrogation, with me still in pajamas and halfway out of my bed. Kiyome shrugged off the thought like a cool breeze and continued to gloat. They'll be busy for a few hours, so I can spend some time with my Ice-kun. I'm nearly hypnotized by her cuteness, almost forgetting where I was. Kiyome hovered above me, with her arms propping her up inches from my face. The alluring scent of perfume hung in the air as I was left stunned at the quite erotic situation I was caught in. We stared into each other's eyes, myself being captured in her sea blue eyes and hers in mine. Her soft lips curled into a welcoming smile, all the muscles in her perfectly sculpted face working in sync to create the simple gesture. We were closer now. She leant in to kiss me, her glistening cherry red lips closing over mine. The kiss only lasted for a brief moment as we both broke for air. Kiyome? I stuttered, a finger going to my still moist lips as she broke out into a fit of laughter. Hahaha. Issei-kun, you're a great kisser. I struggled to conceal my blush as Kiyome gazed out the window with a look of desperation, the rays of warm sunlight breaching the wall of serenity. To my surprise, Kiyome stood upright and dismounted the bed, turning towards the door before stopping and smiling with childish glee. Thank you, Issei-kun. She left the room, her perfume still lingering in the air as I laid back and stared at the ceiling, almost as if it held all the answers to my problems. Thank you for what? I let out an audible grunt, then rose from my bed. It was then a feline figure barged through the door with the subtlety of a foghorn. Master. Ma's my fist connected with his plush soft face. Shut up for a second. My mind flashed back to Kiyome in her lingerie, and a trail of drool escaped my lips. I shook my head, still trying to battle the images flooding my mind. I leapt down the stairs and shot around the corner, stuffing a half-baked breakfast into my mouth. A small exhausted squeak caught my attention, and I glanced backwards to see Morta still struggling behind. Sighing as I did so, I scooped up his fuzzy figure and rushed out the door with a piece of toast hanging from my mouth. I had rounded 2 corners and was on my way to school when a heightened scream assaulted my eardrums. Get out of the way. I turned my head, spotting the owner of the voice and the vehicle she was riding head straight for me. Bam. I rubbed my head in a daze and slowly got up, my hand aiding me by grasping onto something soft. It was strangely soft, like a slowly deflating balloon. I tested this theory by squeezing it several times before it let out a girlish squeal. May I? I slowly stood up, rubbing the tender area on my cheeks where I was slapped unforgivably. Why does my life have to be so complicated? Increasing my pace, I finally made it to school without any more distractions, or so I thought. What are you doing here? Before me stood 3 beautiful girls. The one to the right was tall, with a mature woman's figure and knee-length blue hair. She stood next to a short girl who looked to be a middle schooler, her first-year uniform being the only evidence against it. Her hair was a sandy blonde, contrasting to Kiyome's platinum blonde hair. Finally, the young girl who stood in the middle was Rainer in her uniform, with a surprisingly cute magenta bow, tying her hair into a mess of bangs framing her face and shoulders. They all stood before me in Kuo uniform and ridiculously short skirts. I mean, seriously, why not wear nothing at all? What are you doing here? I repeated, this time in a worried tone. You know that there are devils in this area. I didn't know you cared about us, Issei-kun. I sent Rainer a threatening glare before turning my attention to the old schoolhouse. The weight of my agreement still lingered in my mind. I wasn't like I had sold my soul to them or anything, but yet I still wondered what they would do, what they were capable of. Issei. I snapped out of my thoughts and looked down to Rainer, who had a slightly worried expression. I blinked several times before shaking my head. You spaced out there for a second. Her voice trailed off when her face tightened and her eyes shot open in panic. Her reaction reminded me of a mouse before the sharp metal blade of a trap closed on its head, helpless. I suddenly tensed, slowly craning my neck in an impossible angle to see the figure behind me. Sona Shitori, or more commonly known in the devil world as Sona Sitri. Her carbon black hair was tied into a traditional bob, with her red-rimmed glasses and violet eyes, only emphasizing in her aura as the student council president. Next to her stood the student council vice president Tsubaki Shinra, a girl with similar attire and characteristic black hair, all the way down to the nape of her knees. She had a slim face and wore blue semi-rimmed glasses, shielding her heterochromatic eyes, one violet-purple and the other a sandy brown from the morning sunlight. I stood bolt upright, like a deer in front of headlights as the pair approached us. I snuck a glance upwards, my gaze firmly pinned to my feet, seeing only the stoic expression that both of them wore. Do they even have souls? I thought absent-mindedly. With a sharp click of her fingers, we all jumped, waiting for our doom. She stopped for a second, whispering something into Tsubaki's ear before continuing on her walk as if nothing happened. I sighed in relief and turned to the 3 people behind me to find that they were gone. The sounds of nature invited me, the light ticking of cicadas like a metronome, a violent thump of the birds above like a drum. It was all so peaceful, a place where time seems to slow down. This was my favorite spot, the spot nestled amongst the trees and away from the rabble of the cafeteria. The light casting exotic shadows on the lush grass below and the side of her. Kiyome, maneuvering the lines of the court and smashing the ball across the clay surface, that was what made this spot worthwhile. She was the only thing in my life that I could cherish, that I could cling onto as the rest of my life sped by. It was as if she wasn't affected by time, that time would never change her. That was what I thought as I opened my bento and unloaded its contents into my lap. I felt the crisp air touch my skin, the alluring scent that followed the gushing wind as I stood on the edge of the platform. The subway. Not the most glamorous of places, but it would suit fine for its purpose. A strong presence drew my attention. Crimson hair, she's following me. It had been nearly a week since I spoke with Kiyome, during which I had been avoiding the occult research club for as long as I could. I stuffed a black paw into my bag and stepped into the awaiting train, disappearing from my pursuer's line of sight. I exhaled a breath of relief as I looked up to the person sitting alongside me. The phasing light that washed over her only reflected her elegance and grace, her beautiful blonde hair, her teasing eyes and undying smile. That same smile that had plucked me from the gutters 11 years ago. That same smile that led me into this strange and new reality. Built. My only regret was that poor girl Asia. I can only hope that she is safe in the devil's hands now. A false hope, what would devils want with a nun? This unsettling feeling was what brought silence between us, a silence that was finally broken by a rustle of fabric and a cute sleepy moan from Kiyome. Her head rested softly on my shoulder as the magnetic train sped effortlessly across the changing landscape. Did I deserve this? Did I deserve her attraction? That was my only thought as the train passed a bright blue and white sign, Kyoto, I muttered. This was the place where the constantly flowing spirit energy spilled out of. The place where my cousin moved to when I was 5. How would I confront her? How would I be able to tell her that I was the reason her aunt and uncle were dead? It's not your fault, Issei, Kiyome muttered in her sleep before seamlessly returning to her peaceful slumber. Why would she say that? You cannot be blamed for those events, master. You had no control over what happened. Mortis appeared out of my bag and continued speaking. The master I knew and fought for would quell the demons that threaten his existence. It wasn't your fault, master. Chip added, guys. But the feeling I had wasn't just guilt, no, it was much deeper, fear. My whole life I had run from danger, I had tried to escape. Seeking out the fickle security of others and trying to justify my cowardice. I had never truly fought for myself, instead standing behind others for protection. I looked back at Kiyome, a sleeping angel descended from heaven. My angel. I felt like she was the only person on earth who could understand my pain, yet I felt like she was the last person I'd feel comfortable speaking to about it. Selfish, was all I could think of from then on. As the train sped into Kyoto and the world of flashing lights was thrust into darkness. The train slowed to a halt and we stepped out into the bustle of Kyoto. The city of Kyoto had a strange air about it, like the city had two faces, a light side and a dark side. I couldn't tell which side I wanted to be on. We climbed the stairs to the surface and were bathed in the afternoon sun, the light glistening off our somber bodies. Suddenly Kiyome's had brushed against mine and I flinched, not expecting her warm touch, until I welcomed her hand and grasped it softly. With one hand grasping my bag strap and the other linked with Kiyome, I trudged onwards. IU Academy Occult Research Club room. The floor groaned as a lonely figure dressed in a cloak treaded carefully along the newly polished floor. The figure finally reached the door labeled Occult Research Club. The figure cautiously reached a hand to knock on the door, but it opened before the hand could touch the wooden surface. The person who opened the door wore a badge that said Akeno Vice President. She looked down at the person standing in the doorway and her eyes flared with hatred and disgust as she uttered the words, "Fallen Angel." The furious Akeno, seething with rage, prepared a magical attack just as the figure removed her cloak. Akeno stopped charging her attack, flabbergasted, "Rainer, what are you doing here?" The fallen angel finally opened her mouth. "Speak, there's something I need to tell you. My father, his name is..." Akeno stood with her arms crossed, "And why would I care?" she said in a smug tone. "His name is Barakiel. And? So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.